Hey, my name is Jens and today I'm going to show you how you can easily recreate those images.
I just wanna be with you. I just wanna be with you. Yeah. I just wanna be with you. Yeah, I just wanna be with you. I just wanna dance all night. Forget my problems, I might go insane. I don't really give a damn what they say. And now you know it. Hey, little lady said you feel the same, but I don't believe a word you say, 'cause
The only things you need for today's photo projects are sparklers and a handrail. We're gonna take the sparkler and bend it around the handrail, like this for example, fix it with tape, and then we can create some spiral movement with at the end will have this nice effect on our images. By adjusting the angle of the sparkler, we can decide if we want big or small spirals depending on the image we're looking for. When we've mounted the sparkler to the handle, we just have to move it in a straight direction while using a camera on the tripod with long exposure times. Before you're gonna start and waste all your sparklers, I'd recommend to do some tests, because for me in the beginning it was pretty difficult to move it really in a straight direction and I had to delete a lot of images. As you can see in this footage, the handrail got some small torch on the top. So when you use it, you create some light chain, which we don't want. So I have put some tape on the LED so that the only light source for our image is the sparkler. And just to get a feeling why practicing is not a too bad idea, that's the first image I got.
I just wanna be with you, yeah. I just wanna be with you, yeah. I just wanna be with you, yeah. I just wanna be with you.
Because I have no one who can help me with my photography, 6 seconds exposure times was way too short to get the complete image done. So I switched from 6 to 15 seconds. So I had a lot more time to start the camera, light up the sparkler and then do all the movement around my object. My first idea was to create like a bouncing back effect on a badminton racket. But when taking the image from that angle, the handrail was covering the spiral and the image looked like this. So I had to change the angle and my strategy somehow. And before we move on, I have one tip for you. When you don't want to waste all your sparklers, you can use a sparkler twice. Just use a glass of water, and when you did your image with about 10 or 15 seconds, just drop the sparkler into the water and you can use the second part of the sparkler for your next attempt. And even though the sparkler gets wet, it's pretty easy to re-lighten it up. Okay, after changing the direction of my camera, the shape of the spiral looked much better, but somehow the image looked still a little bit boring. So I decided to add a shuttlecock with an old sparkler. So I just used this to mount the shuttlecock to the racket. And then again I practiced how and in which direction, which curve I wanted to move my handrail, and then I finally got my first pretty good image. I mean, there's still a lot of room for improvement, so I again needed a couple of takes till I got my final image, which you can see right now. If you fail, please be patient, it will be worth it. Now let's move on to the next image. This image looks pretty dangerous. Not for me, but for the lens. But promise there's nothing happening. This kind of image might be a pretty cool profile image. What do you think? To get this image, I had to adjust the shape of the sparkler by adding a 90-degree angle to the sparkler and getting much closer to the lens. And then again, it's try and error, hope to get a perfect straight spiral from your lens. The next image I'm going to show you is a little bit more advanced, but let's start simple. My idea was to just put the sparkler into a bottle and see what is actually going on. I was hoping to make the bubble glow and sparklers everywhere. But somehow the images looked extremely boring. One issue was that the sparkler was producing a lot of smoke, so only the couple of first images looked clear, then everything got blurry. Oh, by the way, I turned on continuous shooting mode, so my camera was taking one image every 4 seconds with an exposure time of 4 seconds. After reviewing my first images, I could really delete the most of them, but some of them looked interesting, like this one. This somehow reminds me of a lightning strike. So I took this image and thought, okay, maybe we can adjust the image so that it looks as if an explosion or something comes out of the bottle. Therefore, I had to adjust my sparkler settings again to create a very, very small thin spiral. Oh, one more tip, there's a lot of smoke in the bottle and it's actually pretty hard to get the smoke out of the bottle. So I'd recommend to use some kind of rocket blower to clean the bottle. And if you have a transparent bottle, this probably will work even better. But I just had the green one, so for this image, this had to be it. Okay, after some tests, I was finally able to get the straight spiral out of the bottle and the image looked like this, which was pretty satisfying for the first moment, but then I realized, what about the bottle? The bottle remains almost invisible, black. I had to fix that. So I took a long exposure image of the bottle, just using my smartphone to illuminating the bottle from both sides. And then I combined both images in Adobe Premiere to one image so that the bottle looks as if it was glowing or there's some energy pressing, shooting the spiral out of the bottle, and it looks more, I don't know if realistic is the correct word, but it looks more like an action photo. And then I just added a bottle cap just for fun. Okay, for the next image, you should look for something which is really shiny. I have done this before with a lens ball, but this time I used a cup made of copper or in a copper look, because now we want to work with the reflections of the sparkler inside and around the copper cup. Okay, then I have put my cup on a macro lens, which is actually made for a smartphone, just to bring it up a little bit and then move a sparkler around the cup. Therefore, I'd recommend to glue the sparkler to a string so that it becomes very long and it is very easy to make smooth, perfect circular rings around your object. Yeah, that's my first image and I must say I like it. But I needed to change the setup a little bit because I thought, okay, there's a lot of nice orange, red and yellow and just black. So I wanted to create more contrast and therefore I used an RGB light I often use for my photography to get some blue background light shining to the cup and getting some more contrast in the image. Oh, and I also took these two images. The first one looks pretty crappy and the second one is actually pretty nice, but to get a nicer effect I should have used a longer exposure time or use more sparklers at the same time. Okay, now let's switch to the blue setup. As mentioned, I just put my RGB light against a white wall, making it illuminating in the blue colors, which reflects back to the cup, and I got this image using long exposure times again. Yeah, also just holding a sparkler next to the cup showed some pretty interesting results, but only if there's a nice reflection. So when you're zooming in, you see yourself, your room, so maybe it's a nice idea when you go outside or at a nice location doing this kind of photography. Okay, for my final image, I'm gonna use some old firecrackers. I hope you still got some somewhere. And I have added a black plexiglass plate because I wanted to add some reflection to the image. But I must say that was not the most clever idea I had because the sparkler damaged the plexiglass plate and it got everywhere some holes and pickles on the surface. I'd recommend to use a mirror, which is probably more resistant than a plastic plexiglass plate. Yeah, just some small adjustments and corrections and you can get an image like this. And on this image you can just see how the battery of my handle died, but for me that was fine. I had my image, I got what I was looking for. What about you? Will you give this sparkling photography a try? I have just ordered 100 more sparklers on Amazon, so I will keep up that topic and try to improve my images every week. And if I got some pretty cool new ideas for you, of course I will share them with you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below about my setup, my gear, my settings, whatever. Just let me know what you want to know or what you'd like to see in the next video maybe. I hope you like this kind of content and that I could give you a little bit of inspiration. Stay healthy and hopefully see you in the next video.